Well, it's my great pleasure to invite the presidential candidate, Martha Karua. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Karibu sana. And you've had a long day today, getting your running mate. And I just want to start from the place of party nominations, where you managed to end on a very clear note. But you had comments to make regarding the nomination process as we wait for the election to come.
Yes, what we have seen is very discouraging. Parties pushing the nomination deadline in a fashion that is suggestive that you want to lock in your members whether they feel you are fair or not. We set our nomination date as 10th of January last year, in November last year. Even when Parliament extended the deadline for party hopping, we did not change our nomination date. Because although we do not encourage party hopping, we feel that a party is not a maximum security prison where you have to lock in your members. Members come and go at will. So we conducted our nominations countrywide on the 10th. The places where we had more than one candidate, we conducted peaceful nominations. And on the 14th of January this year, we issued our members with nomination certificates. I myself was issued with a nomination certificate as the Kenya presidential candidate.
Right. Does this give you any fears leading to the general election? Because your party got it right, but there's more than just your party involved, and the country is worrying now. Voters are worrying, and just generally peaceable Kenyans are worrying for the pictures that they've seen. But does this give you any worries in terms of organization, preparedness of the administration and the authority behind the general election?
I think in a way we must say that the police have done well, but parties have not done well. Parties must be able to prevail upon their supporters, to discipline any candidate or any supporter or member of the party who advocates for use of violence as a means. But more often than not, we have seen parties turning a blind eye. I would want to see political parties punish candidates, bar candidates who advocate violence. But then again, the demonstrations by members of political parties to express their displeasure about the conduct of nominations is legitimate, but has to be conducted within the law, where there is no harassment. The demonstrators could have chosen not to harass the motorists.
No, not for the demonstrators, but in terms of the lessons learned now, going forward, because this process will be back, it will be there. And what does it say in terms of growth of democracy? What should we have done different?
I think I want to congratulate Kenyans. They are showing that they will not be cowed from speaking out. That is clear. And for political parties and those of us in leadership, always plan for free and fair nominations. Right. Days of manipulating results are over. The public has been grumbling and acquiescing, but it's no more. Right. They will stand up for their rights. That's what we have seen. And also for politicians, people wishing to run, let us make our choices early. There's always signs to show you that a party will not adhere to its constitution, to its rules. Why wait till the last minute to be disappointed? And for everybody in Kenya, let us choose our political parties. Let us give time and energy to our parties. Let us grow our parties as institutions that can nurture democracy. Yeah.
Speaking of choices, you made a choice.
Yeah.
You have a running mate. Were you under pressure for time, deadlines? Did you feel that you're leaving it late? Very special and unique about your choice of running mate.
Let me say this. I think because it's the first election in Kenya that candidates for presidency, for governor, have to have running mates. This is a new phenomenon in Kenya. And people started asking for running mates way back last year, even before the electoral process had started. And for me, I was very clear in my mind that until the day my party nominates me as a candidate, until the day I secure my nomination certificate, I cannot name a running mate because I'm a mere aspirant, not a candidate. So on 14th of January, when NARC Kenya issued me with a nomination certificate, the time was ripe for me to name a running mate.
Right.
I don't want to say that I only consulted between the 14th and today. I knew that I had to name a running mate, so I was looking at the various options. But after nomination is when I went into consultations about the choices I was considering with my party, with my advisors, culminating in today's announcement.
Was this a call for process? Was it a call out of curiosity? And now, broadly speaking, when Kenyans ask for a running mate from somebody, is it because they're clamoring for process, or is it just out of curiosity owing to the fact that parties are people? Parties have not cleared their space as ideologies. So it was just about who is the personality who is going to be next to Martha.
Curiosity, and also wanting to see the team, so to speak. Yes.
If it would add to your appeal.
And those are legitimate. It's a legitimate curiosity, legitimate questions that show us, unveil your team.
Right.
Yeah, that's sort of.
Well, tonight you're here with a very specific purpose. You want the Kenyan vote.
Yeah.
You feel it is time, it is ripe, and you're the candidate for this. And let me take you a little back just to background who Martha Karua is. You've ridden very highly on a platform of reform.
Yeah.
Could you just describe from your profile for me what you would call a true Kenyan reformer? What would we see in a reformer of this country?
The long and short of it is adhering to the rule of law, making sure that things are done overboard, not under the table. That precisely is it. Because if we follow the law, the reforms that we want, a majority of them are prescribed by our laws. The procedure for arriving at those reforms, a majority of them are prescribed by the law. And now we are talking about the Constitution, which has provisions for institutional reforms. And I think that following the rule book enables us to bring to fruition the agreements between us as a people, because the laws represent what Kenyans have agreed upon. If it's the Constitution through negotiations and through the referendum, if it is the laws passed in Parliament through our elected representatives. So I think that's the first step, that you're able to follow and to comply with the law.
Your platform of reform then landed you the Ministry of Justice.
Yeah.
You left. Do you owe Kenyans an apology? Do you owe Kenyans an explanation for leaving that which you really stood firm on reforms? And does it affect your clamor for a vote now?
Not at all. I think Kenyans ought to congratulate me, and they often do. Because when you feel that there are impediments which make your tenure in any office not useful to the people of Kenya, then you are under obligation to quit. I was an appointee of the president. He's the one who gave me mandate for the Justice Ministry. If the same mandate is then withdrawn, then why would I be earning a salary? Why would I remain in office? Remaining in office is giving my name to the things that are being done, things I'm opposed to. That was time to quit, to say no, and to be able to point out and say, this is being done wrongly. When you are in government, there is the principle of collective responsibility. You cannot openly criticize a government you're serving. So if you try pointing out and there's no agreement on those issues, the honorable thing is to quit. You cannot remain in government like I'm hearing my competition doing, claiming that I was unable to do this because of X, Y, Z. If you're in with the corruption there is in government, then you are part of it.
Right.
If you have not been able to openly say this is wrong, so I opted to remain faithful to what I believed in, and I opted to resign. But I still represented Kenyans, the people of Gishugu and Kenya, as a member of the National Assembly, and Kenyans do acknowledge that all the time.
Well, leadership that we have now often speaks of being on a national platform.
Yeah.
You've also talked about being a nationalist. But when it comes to getting the Kenyan vote, we have seen a lot of leaders having to go back to their roots. That means going back to their ethnic origins.
Yeah.
Now, it has been said, and I'm sure you've had this, I just want to hear you talk about this tonight, that the fact that you walked out of that office, it has probably offended some of the Kikuyu who would have voted for you. It has probably offended their senses in terms of why did Martha walk out on Mzee when Mzee needed her? And why would we then embrace her if she's capable of taking such sharp turns and taking a hard left when we expect her to be otherwise? Is this true?
May I first begin by saying Mzee is not a deity. He held and still holds a position that Kenyans have given him, the highest position in the land. That doesn't make him a deity. He's a human being. You can agree or disagree with him. I disagreed with him, with his government, and I walked out of government. It's a choice I made. And I'm sure many Kenyans sometimes disagree with his government, with some of the steps he takes. That doesn't make one wrong. We are all entitled to our views.
But
anybody
at home,
saying
is it a
that, I would
problem?
tell them,
Yes.
you're living in the dark era.
Is it a problem in Gishugu? Has anybody in Gishugu told you it wasn't right for you to do this?
But there are people everywhere who think differently.
Right.
Even in Gishugu, I've never been elected by 100%,
Right.
but I've always been elected by a majority. There will be naysayers everywhere. Even in this industry, someone will tell you your show could have been better if you did this and that.
Right.
We'll never be homogeneous.
Right.
But people, reasonable people, check what you have done. Many Kenyans do appreciate. I sacrificed a position of influence and a salary to stand for what I felt was right. And that is what is lacking in today's leadership. People put their interests first. If I was putting my interests first, I would have remained with my salary, with my position of influence, and grumble from inside. And you see it every day.
Right.
I chose the less trodden path
Okay.
of quitting. But not quitting working for the people of Kenya.
Right.
I continued working for the people of Kenya because I dissociated myself by leaving government. I was saying no to corruption. I was saying no to impunity. I was saying no to what was going on in government.
The pictures Kenyans have witnessed recently to do with the nominations, for some, they've triggered memories from way back beyond, and they've triggered pictures from the last election. And for some, they've triggered pictures of who Martha was back then. Having changed position, having spoken about a different virtue, do you feel that you had a gap to bridge? Do you feel that you had a sort of a trust building to do for Kenyans if they looked at the pictures of Martha then and the Martha they see now?
Absolutely not. There's something we have to be very clear about. What is it that Martha did? Just saying that the only person who can announce elections is the Electoral Commission? Would a person who is a contestant announce their own victory by telling people to follow the rule of law? If you are aggrieved, you do not hurt the person you disagree with. You go to court for arbitration. I stood for the rule of law then. I stand for the rule of law now. I was an agent for Kibaki at the KICC. It was within the law. His competition, namely Raila and ODM, had scores of agents in the same place. Why was it not wrong for Orengo or any other person to be an agent for Raila, but wrong for me to be an agent for Kibaki? I think people have to stop double standards.
Right.
There is no apology owed to anybody, and when I do appoint my agents, whether it's Louis Otieno or somebody else, I expect you to stand in my shoes and within the law defend my positions. And that's what I did.
Have you ever informally or formally, because I know this issue just come up, I want to close on this question on that issue. Yeah. Have you ever had a formal or informal discussion with the president from the time you walked out of office with regard to that?
No, not with regard to that. I've never had a discussion with him ever since I left government.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
a president is not just another person who you meet in a local cafe to talk with. Right. So I have never had a discussion with him. We've met in public places and we haven't gotten near even to greetings, because if the president doesn't greet you, you don't go looking for him. His guys may stop you. So. And
treat you badly.
Yes.
Closing up on the reform question, you had colleagues who you were together in battle with, and you achieved a lot. But now you speak from different corners of the country, you have different voices, this changed. You've mentioned even somebody like Mheshimiwa Orengo, there was Mheshimiwa Kiraitu, and others whom you were very close with when you were in the trenches. Now when some of the victories which you yearned for are actually tangible, example is the achieving the new constitution. You've gone separate ways.
Even during the constitutional review, we went separate ways to some extent. Those who will remember when the document was in Parliament, some of those very same colleagues had brought a myriad of amendments. I literally led the no amendment movement, and eventually they all came round and supported. So it is, people go different ways because you opt for different pursuits. And I have stuck to where I began, the path of seeking reforms. We sought reforms that brought multi-party politics. I was then not in Parliament. I was a lawyer fighting for reforms in the country, after which I became a member of Parliament. 10 years in the opposition benches fighting for reforms. Then I come to government, become Minister of Water, instituting water sector reforms. Reforms that are firmly in place up to this day, even though governance issues have returned to the ministry. But the way we reformed the water sector and took the water service boards near the people, that is what, actually, that was the earliest devolution, if you like.
You know, and I ask you this?
Constitutional review, as Minister of Justice, I helped to craft a law that enabled us to get the Constitution, all the laws that we needed to bring in the coalition government after the agreement. Those were laws pushed by me, all the new institutions. So I'm still on the reform path, and Kenya needs institutional reforms that we agreed upon and have never been carried out, including reform of the police force, supporting the judiciary, which is on the path of reform, supporting all the institutions that need reform, including the public service, so that we can have better service delivery.
I ask you this because of the conversations we hear that start with, we were in the trenches together, we fought the oppressor together. I don't know if everybody knew who the oppressor was or had agreed who the oppressor or the oppressors were at the time. But then the natural lead up to that conversation would then be, and so here we are, we want to form government because we had the same challenges, we fought the same enemies. But that doesn't ring true, not just to you, this is not unique to you, but generally to the people who are claiming, and rightfully so, that they did a lot of work for this country. So for me, it's a bit interesting that yes, you were there, you did the work, but at the end of it, you're not together. Why would there be such a separation if you actually had the same enemies and had the same aspirations?
It depends on where individually, what pursuits you have had and where your heart is at the moment. We were criticizing the KANU regime for not giving us enlarged democratic space, for not respecting rule of law and human rights. Today's government is also not respecting the rule of law and human rights. Can this government claim to be a respecter of human rights when IDPs are still in the camps 5 years after the skirmishes? How about denying people medical attention through corruption, the NHIF saga, which has been swept under the carpet, even when there's clearest evidence that money was dished out to institutions that did not deserve it. The maize scandal, which resulted in the price of maize meal going up, all the scandals that have been there, which have been covered up. If you're stealing Kenyans' money through corruption and you are covering it, you cannot be respecting the rights of the people, even their basic rights, because that corruption denies them their basic rights.
So it should not be then peculiar that you have clear credits for fighting for reforms, but right now, seeing your running mate and seeing maybe the team you'll surround yourself with, it does not then follow that you must then surround yourself with other people from the trenches. Because some have argued, why give leadership to people who have no clue what it took to get this kind of space? Is that a correct argument for you?
If you have a clue and you have gone back, which shows that you are fighting just for space. It's not that you minded so much what was being done, it's that you were not part of it, part of the gravity train, if you like. Because if you really didn't like what was happening, then you shouldn't be allowing it to happen under your watch. Therefore, the credentials for leadership, in my view, it's not whether or not somebody has been in leadership before. It's not how many years you have been in parliament. It's not whether you have held positions of power. It's your human worth. What credentials do you bring on the table? Are you a person who will put Kenyans first? Are you a person who will care when you see people in difficult situations about Kenyans sleeping hungry?
But
where is
Martha,
your
you know,
heart?
this is hard to measure.
Yeah, it is hard to measure.
In a country where we don't have the accuracy to measure these things, Martha, how would I measure these things if I'm looking for a leader?
For those who have a track record, you measure what they have done in the roles they have played. For those who are not, you measure by their utterances, by other indicators. But it is, yes, it is difficult to measure. For leaders like me who have been in the public domain for a while, Kenyans can check our track records, you see? And I keep on saying, if you want to know that a leader can fight corruption, then you must check the history of that leader. Have they been involved in corruption?
Right.
If they're involved in corruption, they definitely are not suited to fight corruption and impunity. Do they obey the law? You see? Recently, I willingly made my wealth declaration public.
And you remain the only one who's done
this. And that
is
the letter and spirit of our Constitution. And I'm challenging, even now, my competition, if they truly are reformers and believe in our Constitution, you do not need Parliament to pass a law to force you, to compel you, to make open your declaration of wealth. The Constitution is there to guide you. If it is wealth you acquired legitimately, because being wealthy is not a crime. If you acquired it legitimately, go ahead and declare and let people interrogate. And so there's so many ways you can tell whether a leader is genuine. I'm saying, if you look at the Hansard from 1992 when I entered Parliament, December, to the time I have left, you will see issues I have consistently articulated.
Right.
Positions I have consistently defended, that I have not changed from that time I entered Parliament as a novice to the time I'm leaving as an experienced lawmaker.
Martha, that worries me. It worries me because I, for one, am very clear about how much work you've done.
Yeah.
But let's face it, we're not a reading nation.
Yeah.
We're not. We don't critically look at leadership qualities. We don't critically follow up on this kind of track record. Who is your typical voter? And for them, when you lay out this kind of track record, do they see it? They don't read it. They don't know it. How will this translate to an appeal for them?
By the way, Kenyans follow, and luckily, this particular parliament has been transmitted live to the people. When I tell them I have stood with you, they applaud because they know. When I tell them I've articulated your issues, they agree because they know. So we are dealing with a public that has keenly been following parliamentary proceedings. We are dealing with a public who also have a memory and will remember one or two things, who may even question you about one or two other things. So I don't think that it is the time when voters would have to be told about who a person is. I've gone to many corners of this country, practically every county, and I get people talking in those gatherings, telling me who I am. People I have not met, telling me this, we know X, we know Y about you. So thank God for the transmission of parliamentary proceedings live.
Will this voter appreciate the declaration of 56 million, Martha Karua? Because I see the form of it. I see why it would make sense in terms of the new constitution.
Yeah.
But let's face it, we still have a voter who's largely euphoric.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of arguments where some have even argued that, you know what, I will vote Martha in because she's made enough money, so she won't take my little money. So when somebody says Martha's worth 56 million, does that translate to getting another voter to be persuaded about your true cause?
Let's first say that you first do what is right, whether it benefits you or not. Long term it will, if it doesn't in the short term. Because if you fail to do what is right because you don't think that it will be the popular thing, then we'll have everybody subverting the law. So first and foremost, whether it's a popular path or not, I will do what is right. And I did what is right. Now, whether a person in the streets will think 56 million is much or is not much, the point is they will know that I'm not withholding information. I'm being open about it. I'm laying myself bare to interrogation. And they will contrast me with my competition who is not laying themselves bare.
What happens if they don't, in the end? If none of them actually stands up and says, well, I'm worth 10 bob?
It's up to the voters. And it is up to you and me, as Kenyans who are enlightened, to carry this debate. It becomes a tragedy when those who are supposed to be informed trivialize the debate. Trivialize the debate into asking, is this all? Is this that? What we should be hearing is the noises we had when Parliament mutilated the integrity law that would have made, would have obligated everyone to make their declarations open.
Right.
Those same voices which were saying you have subverted the Constitution. This is an opening to now say you don't have to be forced. Yes, you can do it. Whether they say it or not, I feel good that I have done what the Constitution demands, so that as I tell Kenyans, I am going to implement the Constitution as it is. I will not need to be reminded, like the current government, which up to this date has refused to gazette the Land Commission, which would then begin the land reform. Okay. I will not need to be reminded I will not need to be reminded like this government, which makes erroneous appointments, and they have to reverse them because they are reminded that the Constitution needed you to do it differently. That's the point I'm making to Kenyans. I will honor the Constitution and the laws of Kenya.
Well, I'm going to go into a little break now, but you're meeting Martha, you're learning a little more about Martha tonight, and I'm hoping that you're beginning to understand the person of Martha Karua so that you get closer to making a decision for or not to vote for Martha. This and more when Newsline continues after this break. Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. Tonight, you're with Martha Karua, and she's asking for your vote. A lot of ways to ask for the vote, a lot of ways to discuss whether to vote for her or not. Mshamba has his own idea.
Kura si ni mimi tu, kwani kuna mwingine? Mimi si ni mtu wa watu. Basi, wacha nimalize hii maneno ya press tukuje tukunye chai. Asante. This is my wealth. Yeah, press. Hii nyumba ukianzia pale tutea, it's my wealth in this world. Hii ndio mali yangu. Unajua watu wamedeclare wealth sao, lakini running mates hawajadeclare. Mimi, this is my running mate. He's also my housemate because anaishi hapa, mimi naishi hapa. Unaona, milango hapa na hapa. He's also my wealth because he pays me rent. Yeah, nachukua pesa kutoka kwake pia. So
this is Joyce.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are the toys.
Yeah, these are also part of wealth. Our wealth. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, inside we can't go in. It's too dark. For now. Sasa mnaweza toka tukaingia kwa manyumba. Press, you can go. Hello? Oh. Wewe fit ni mingi. Inanichanganya. Hello? Yes. No. Muna shida. No. I don't need a Range Rover. I need a better car. I need, just shop around good cars. I need a good car. Mwenye nataka nikienda mashinani, people see me as mtu ambaye ako na mali. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. The two houses, no, council to order. The two houses at the beach. I think let's look for something maybe in Dubai. I don't need more property in Mombasa. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Bwana Mheshimiwa, actually about the 5 years back, we actually saw how you were at that time, and right now actually you're better off, Mheshimiwa. Can you actually account for your wealth in that span of 5 years that now you're into power?
Sasa hiyo ni swali. Baraka ikikuja, si unakubali? Mungu alileta baraka watu wameniombea kutoka kila mahali. Mimi ni mtu napendwa na watu. Yes, mali ikakuja. Na mali ikikuja mimi nachukua.
Did you see that? Is that the scenario we're dealing with, where people begin from the low life, and in 2-3 years they cannot? It takes them a whole day to count their wealth.
Well, if one acquires legitimately, and I doubt that you can be an overnight millionaire or billionaire through legitimate means, it's well and good. But we should be able to account.
What would you advise the Kenyan voter who's been caught up so many times in that web of looking for the wealthy person to vote for because they'll either solve all their problems or they will know what to do?
Is that vote, you're voting for yourself. If you vote for a leader who can then implement policies that transform your life, you're voting for yourself. But when you vote for the same leaders who have oppressed you, then you oppress yourself. So I'm saying it's time to look for leaders who will stand with you, who will put interests of the country and of the people first.
Now that you're here, let me see the areas which would be attractive for the voter who's looking to vote for Martha Karua. Let's start with the economy. We know how it is. A lot of the jobs are in the informal sector, a huge percentage of the jobs in the informal sector. Less people have jobs, more people depending on the few who have jobs. So the country doesn't save, the economy is limping. And everybody makes promises about economic growth, job creation. What is Martha Karua's plan?
One who wants to create jobs, you must focus on the small and medium enterprises and on the so-called informal sector, because that's where job creation is. And with the support, finance, training, and even opening up, because the government is the largest trading partner in any country. So if the government becomes a consumer of the goods that are being produced locally, you create jobs. So focusing on the SMEs, supporting Kenyans to create jobs, those traders, the young innovators, making capital accessible to them, having incubation hubs. Those are some of the ways of making sure that you create jobs, and also making sure that the investment environment is conducive.
Are you going to be on record for making certain promises in terms of a growth span, a growth space, or in terms of job and wealth creation? What are the things I can hold Martha Karua accountable for?
One of the things, and I've just said it, we have to consume what we produce. If you go to the average office in Kenya today, starting with the government offices, we'll be having furniture from Asia, from Dubai, from China. Things that our people can do. When you import all that furniture, what we are saying is that we are creating jobs out there. Look at the apparel we wear. Very little of what is produced here. The things we can do, we must encourage, support our people with training and with opportunities to market their products. And that way we create jobs, but more so creating, deliberately having policies that support the small and medium enterprises. That doesn't mean we ignore the large industries, but we add them on, because attention is normally focused on the larger enterprises. But I know in any country, including in the developed world, a majority of jobs come from the SMEs.
So if I meet Martha and I want to vote for Martha, I have an education, and I'm just asking Martha, I want a job. I'm educated, I can't get work. Why will it be better during your time?
By those deliberate policies, yes. And people wonder, can we have jobs for all Kenyans? Yes, we can. You look at countries like America with very large population of 300 million. But anybody who wants to do some work will get. You may not get the white collar job you're looking for, but you will not starve because you didn't get a job. So we have to have an economy whose benefit trickles down to the entire population, not just to a few at the top, and appropriate policy interventions.
Actually, that has led to our education system being challenged and questioned at every corner, with especially the whole question of, do we have relevant education for Kenyans now, for what they need, for what they can do? What are your ideas on fixing education?
Education, I think a lot has been written about it by commissions, by this and that group. It's a question of putting it together, but reviewing constantly to respond to the needs of the industry, to the needs of the country. Like I think now that oil has been discovered in Kenya, we would see our universities starting to have courses that are relevant to that. So we should have a review of our education system constantly, liaising with industry, so that our education system responds to our needs.
Agriculture, perennial food insecurity, the disparity between one corner of the country being able to feed itself and even have food rotting, and the other end having nothing, waiting for relief. What will happen in Martha Karua's government?
We will solve the distribution problems, because that's why one end of Kenya will be starving, another end will be throwing away food. And it is the duty of government through its agencies to solve the distribution problems, to support our farmers, look at the roads infrastructure to where those products are coming from. It will cost the farmers so much to get to the market. And then certain interventions by government agencies, when the farmers are ready with their cereals, nobody is around to buy them. Because of the pressure of the daily needs, the farmers will sell to the brokers, then the brokers will make a kill. And the money that the government will be offering to farmers is not a good enough incentive for them to return back to their farms and put in more crops. Yet, the same year, when we have to import relief food, the government will be willing to pay, sometimes double that amount, to bring in maize from outside the country. So it's a question of deliberately having policies that encourage our farmers, investing in them so that they may feed our nation. Also, proper utilization of land and the scarce water resources that we have.
Land is
Kenya is
a challenge.
Water scarce. With better planning, we have sufficient arable land, and we can utilize the water resources we have ultimately. I keep on giving the example of Egypt. Egypt, the arable land is about 4% just on the banks of the Nile. We eat fruits from Egypt, rice from Egypt, many products from Egypt. Optimal use of just that 4%. In Kenya, we have a lot more, and we can do a lot better with proper planning, with water infrastructure, because we must be able to harvest water. The driest parts of this country also get the heaviest rain.
The typical Kenyan is not complete if there's no land. What do you can do about this argument? I must have land to be successful. I must have a fallback. I must have as much land as I can, or I must have that little acreage. How does that translate into your plan for Kenya being able, A, to feed itself, and also the whole land management issue in this country, which has gone from corruption to ethnicity to very violent acts sometimes, people fighting for land physically?
Those are the reforms that are envisaged in the Constitution and in the laws that we have made once the Land Commission is put in place. And one of the things is to map out the areas where our food, the food that we need to feed our nation is coming from. Give incentives for farmers and look at areas where you can do farming, large-scale farming, for it to make sense. And diversify the things that Kenyans can do. We hold on to land as the only means of production we know.
And fight to acquire it.
Yeah, but once the country moves towards industrialization, towards value addition in agriculture, you need not be a farmer, but you can be in the value addition chain, and you too can be able to eke out a living. And a lot of jobs will be created in a Martha Karua government in agriculture through processing and value addition.
Does that include redistribution of the land?
Redistribution of the land can only be so much, you see. But when you help farmers to value add, you create jobs along the value addition chain, and you create more income for the farmer.
Do you foresee any conflicts with you being in government in terms of trying to sort out the land question, a few having more and people asking for redistribution?
The Constitution already has given a guideline on that if you have 10,000 acres and you are using only 1,000, the government can come in and acquire the land that you are not using and compensate you. There are legal ways of doing that. And the legal means of acquiring land that the government needs has always been there. But we must begin to understand that land will never be enough. It's a finite commodity, and we can never have enough land.
Health.
And that's why even in housing, we are starting to proceed vertically and not so much horizontally, because we need to have high-rise to accommodate more people. What is happening up country is that people with small farms are subdividing them, and finally all our land will be covered by houses, the land we could have used for whatever. So we need to start that conversation, because the government will not force solutions on the people. It's through consultations and dialogue that policy will be formulated that will lead us to better utilization of the land that we have.
Tell me a bit about health very quickly.
For Mother Karua and NAC Kenya, we are talking of universal access to health for all Kenyans. And we are talking also of universal education up to Form 4, so both primary and secondary education.
And the clamor for space for the young, the youth in this country dominate the numbers statistically.
Yeah.
Is there a magic plan to sort out the issues of the youth?
One of the ways of sorting out issues of the youth is including them at the decision-making table. And this is something we have done already at the party level. This is something we will do at the government level, so that together we find solutions for the youth problem, and that we can be able to offer them support in education, in training, and as innovators, so that they can be able to put their ideas into commercially viable things.
Will I see you making some biases towards empowering the Kenyan woman?
Yes, because women have been marginalized as a society, and we have recognized this in the Constitution. We have to be proactive to bring women on board, if it's in the economic arena, if it's in the political arena, and that's why we are having quotas. And you can see that even today, there is a women fund, but badly managed. That is why most women have not been able to access. The same with the youth fund. Reorganize this and make those funds actually available at a lower rate, because at the present moment, the difference is the same with the bank. You still get asked for collateral. You still get asked high interest rate. So we truly need to make these interventions accessible and meaningful to women, to the youth, to all the sectors, whether it's to farmers, to all those who need it.
Right. Well, this is the beginning of several conversations I'm going to have with you, but now I'll allow you to maybe touch on an area very quickly that you feel you must tell your potential voter tonight about as we wind up.
About security. The insecurity we are suffering, we can be able to do something about it by equipping the police with hardware, or our security agencies with both hardware and software. We cannot be policing in this century without the aid of technology. Whether it is issues of traffic or issues of crime, our officers would not have walked into an ambush in the Suguta Valley if we were using modern technology. They would have been able to scan long before. We shouldn't be encountering the problems we are encountering in Tana River. We should be able to police using technology, looking after their welfare, and eradicating or fighting corruption and impunity, because they are adding to our security problems, both internal and external. from that officer at the border who will let undesirable elements get in, to that police officer who works in league with a criminal who then becomes a menace to the entire community. So I'm saying to Kenyans, to citizens and to the voters, that corruption and impunity are your greatest enemies. And in me, you'll have a president who leads from the front in fighting corruption and impunity. Whatever attractive policies and manifestos we lay on the table, without fighting corruption and impunity, they'll all come to naught. The funds that could implement these programs will be lost to corruption.
Right. And finally, do you have a responsibility you want to remind the voter, because it goes both ways?
Yes, that the voter, each one of us, because I'm a voter too, we have the responsibility of choosing the leaders that we deserve. If we want to eradicate our problems today, or to at least move to a greater Kenya, then we need to choose leadership wisely.
Right.
And it's not about money. I'm telling Kenyans that although a lot of people who seek election are seeking it through dishing out money to voters, don't sell your birthright. Follow your heart. Elect those you feel will stand with you. And I'm saying I've stood with Kenya, I will stand with Kenya.
Martha Karua, always a pleasure. I wish you well.
Thank
and we'll
you.
be watching and speaking to you again as we proceed.